Hello, how are you today? I hope you're fine. Today we're going to have a class as an introduction for Unit 3 that's devoted towards stress. We have already discussed some of the things that we're going to say today, that I am going to show you today, but I'm going deeper into the construction or the structure of a syllable. So the idea today is that you understand how a syllable is structured in order to understand how stress is set in a word. We have said that we are going to face in our English life like one-syllable words and more than one-syllable words. One-syllable words as yes or no are simple because they only have one, and that one syllable is the one that is stressed, is the one that is strong. You can perceive it better, it's clearer, and it has a higher pitch. In the case of longer words, as for example, intelligent, beautiful, important, for example, cupboard, more than one syllable words, 2, 3 or more, you have to think that there is one of the syllables in that word that has a clearer definition as regards perception. It's stronger, and that's the stress syllable. But to know and to recognize the stress syllables, we need to know how the syllable is structured. So let's go to the nature of the syllable itself, okay? When we look at the nature of vowels and consonants in previous units, it was shown that one could see whether a particular sound was a vowel or a consonant on the phonetic ground, that is in relation to how much they obstructed the airflow. So if there was no obstruction, the sound was a vowel, and if there was a little obstruction or a complete obstruction, this sound was a consonant. Sorry. Or on a phonological ground, that is vowel and consonants having different distributions. We find a similar situation with the syllable, yes, with syllables. In that, it may be defined both phonetically and phonologically, yes? So we're going to start with the phonetical ground. Phonetically, that is to say, in relation to the way we produce the sound, we produce the syllable, we produce them, the different consonants, and the way they sound. Syllables are usually described as consisting one center, which has little or no obstruction to the airflow, yes, with the center, and which sounds comparatively loud. So the center of the syllable, in which there is a lot of air going out, so that's why we always say that there is a vowel as a center, that the vowel is the center of the syllable, because there is no obstruction, and it's perceived louder. Before and after the center, there is a great obstruction, can be found a great obstruction, that is to say, at the beginning and at the end of the syllable. There will be greater obstruction to the airflow and or less loud sound. We will see these examples. So, for example, we call minimum syllable, yes, to a single vowel in isolation. For example, in a word as the verb to be are, okay, are, yes, the are. This is a minimum syllable. It's only one vowel. So we call those words that are formed by only one vowel as minimum syllable. Some syllables have an onset, and that is, instead of a silence, they have one or more consonants before the center, preceding the center of the syllable. For example, as the word ba. This is an onset syllable, okay, because it has a consonant, an obstruction before the vowel. Syllables may have no onset. You can find syllables with no onset, but with a coda. We have said that the coda is when the syllable ends with a consonant, okay, one or more. Let's take only one. Here it says ends with one or more consonants. So, for example, a word as is, yes, facilidad, is, it ends with a coda, which is the sound z, Okay? Sorry. And some syllables have both. Yes, both have an onset, a sound at the beginning, and a coda, a consonant at the end. For example, as the word sad. Sad. You have here an onset. It is an onset mark here, and here you have a coda. Okay? Let's go on. This is one way of looking at the syllable. Looking at them from the phonological point of view is quite different. What this involves is looking at the possible combinations of the English phonemes, okay? So it is simple, or it's simplest, to start by looking at what we can see, what can occur in initial position, okay? In other words, what can occur at the beginning, at the first word, when we begin to speak after a pause. Okay, so when we talk about the phonological point of view as regards the syllable, we're going to talk about the combination between vowels and consonants, okay? So no word begins with more than 3 consonants, but we can say that a word can begin with 1 vowel or 1, 2, or 3 consonants. And it can end with a vowel or 1, 2, 3, up to 4 consonants, and then we will see how we can have a word finishing with 4 consonants. So let's move on to the structure of a syllable. Let us now look in more detail at syllable onsets. Remember that the onset is the obstruction that you have before the center of the syllable. That is, a consonant that you have before a vowel. If the first syllable of a word, of any word, begins with a vowel, any vowel may occur, but not U is rare, we say that this initial syllable has a 0 onset. 0 onset, the word begins with a vowel, okay? If the syllable begins with 1 consonant, that initial consonant may be any consonant phoneme. So again, we can work with any consonant now because we need any obstruction. We now look at the syllables beginning with 2 consonants. Okay, so we said that if there is no consonant at the beginning, we said that you have 0 onset. But what happens when we have 2 consonants? Okay, when we have 2 or more consonants together, we call them consonant cluster. Okay? Initial 2 consonant cluster are of 2 sorts of English. So when you have 2 consonants together in a cluster at the beginning, there are 2 different possibilities. The first one is composed always with the S sound, okay? Followed by one of any of these, the following consonants that I am going to say now. T, wa, for example. The S consonant, the sound in this cluster is called the pre-initial. Yes, consonants. And the other consonants, T, wa, in this case, for example, is the initial consonant. So you have here a diphthong, smoke, O, O, and here you have an obstruction before the diphthong, O. And this obstruction is formed by 2 consonants together. You have here a pre-initial and then an initial sound, an initial consonant in this consonant cluster. Okay? So let's go on with the other possibility. The other possibility begins with one of any of about 15 consonants followed by one of the other set of consonants. For example, in a word as play. This is a common consonant cluster. Play, play, play. It's a common one. Yes? And here you have an initial consonant and a post-initial consonant. The initial one is the first one in this case. So those are 15 consonants in which the second, the post-initial, would be L, Ra, Wa, and Ya. Yes? We call the first consonant of this cluster the initial consonant and the second one the post-initial consonant. There are some restrictions on which consonants can occur together. Yes, but here you have a lot of possibilities to say. You have, for example, play, clay, black, glue, fly, slip, slip. Well, in this case, you have the second possibility because the second sound, the postination, is a la. Remember that we said that when a word begins with s, it has to have t, wa, and in order to have a pre-initial, okay? So the idea is that you start learning this not because it's something like life or death, but the idea is that you start recognizing the question of consonants and abstraction. So remember, let's try to rewind a little bit. We have a pre-initial and an initial when the word begins with s, and the consonants that follow are t, wa, and m. Yes, and if a word begins with 15 consonants followed by these ones, yes, and here you have examples, you have an initial and a post-initial. When we look at 3 consonant clusters, we can recognize a clear relationship between them, yes, 3 consonant cluster, for example, screen, and the two sorts of 2 consonant cluster described before, what I said before, yes, because you have a pre-initial here, k, which is the initial, and ra, which is post-initial. And this is something that happens always with 3 consonant cluster. You're going to say, okay, but you said that the ones that follow the s sound would be t, wa, and m. Well, in the case that you have 3 consonant cluster, you have the obligation here to set the s sound as a pre-initial sound. Yes, k, the initial sound, and ra, the post-initial. Yes, the s is the pre-initial always with the p, t, k in general. Yes, when you have a 3 consonant cluster. Okay, and it's or that you have any other of 3 consonant cluster without the consonants that I have already established. Okay, so let's go on. We now have a similar task to do when we need to recognize what happens at the end. What happens when we have consonant cluster, but at the end of words, final consonant cluster. Yes, we can have up to 4 consonants. It's a possibility that we are going to discuss in a moment. I will tell you how and why. So if there is no final consonant, if the word ends with a vowel, if there is no final consonant, the same as we said with the 0 onset, we said the 0 coda. Yes? When there is one consonant only at the end, this is called the final consonant. Only one consonant is the final consonant. Any consonant could be the final consonant. Don't worry, okay? Because not h, wa, or ya, but the rest they can be final consonants. There are 2 sorts of 2 consonant final cluster. 2 types, the same as the one we have discussed before. One being a final consonant preceded by a pre-final consonant, as in this case, yes, and the other is a final with a post-final consonant. So let's see. The pre-final consonants are these ones. I cannot see because here it's the, well, I will try to get away the arrow so you can see them. Okay, there. So again, the pre-final consonants form a small set. They are m, n, g, la, y sa. We can see these in words as in bend, for example. You have the n sound there. Bump, bank, built, ask, for example. The post-final consonant here in this case can often be identified as separate morphemes. Morphemes as s, z, t, d, and th, and they correspond, as they are morphemes, they are suffixes, they correspond, for example, to plurals, in this case of these two, regular verbs, in the case of these two, and for example, when we talk about ordinal numbers, this one, th. So, whenever you have these ones to a word, as in the case of bed, for example, bed, this is a final consonant. If you have only the d sound at the end, we can say that this is the final consonant. But when you have the plural in beds, you have a post-final. The z sound is a post-final, okay? And it is related to the voicing characteristics of the final consonant. That's why it is important to start working with this topic, because these post-final consonants, in the case of s, z, t, d, and th, are related to the voicing characteristics of the final consonant. If the final consonant, and please write this down, if the final consonant is a voiced sound, yes, the post-final consonant would be voiced. If the final consonant is voiceless, the post-final consonant will be voiceless. For example, in the case of bed, d, this one is a voiced sound. So the plural would be a voiced sound, z. Okay? Okay, let's go on. There are two types of final, but in this case, 3 consonant cluster. We have discussed 2, now let's go with 3. You have the first, which is the pre-final, the second one, that is the final, and the last one, that is the post-final. And we can have it in this kind of words. You see, regular verb of help, plural of bank, bonds, and here you have the ordinal number. So in the case of helped, you have h, yes, but the 3 final ones, helped, l, pre-final, p, final, and t, post-final, which is the, as you may see, this one is voiceless and this is voiceless. So this is the post-final is the d or t for the regular verbs, okay? The second type shows how more than one post-final consonant can occur in a final cluster. And here you have a final, a post-final first version, and a post-final second version. For example, in the word as fifths, los quintos, fifths, you have fifth at the end, th for the th, fifth, s for the plural, fifths. It also happens with the word next, next, okay, next. Okay, let's go on. And now we get to the 4 consonant clusters. And this is something that it's not regular to happen, but it can happen too. Most 4 consonant cluster can be analyzed consisting of a final consonant. Here you have, the final consonant. But it has a pre-final, a final consonant, a first post-final, and a second post-final. For example, in the word as 12ths, los doceavos, okay? So you have 12, f final, l is pre-final, th post-final 1, and the plural post-final 2. Prompts also. M pre-final, p final, t post-final 1 version, and the plural second post-final. So to sum up, we may describe the English syllable as having the following phonological structure. Okay, so pre-final. I don't know why I will take the arrow far away from the last part. So you have pre-final. Please pay attention to this here. Okay, so you have pre-initial, initial, and post-initial. Those are part of the onset of a syllable. Then you have the vowel, which is the center, And the coda, which is the tail or the final part, you have the pre-final, the final. You can have a post-final version 1, post-final version 2, and post-final version 3. Yes? So having this into account, having this analysis into account, we are going to be able to understand next class what is the property that we can find in those syllables that are strong. Yes, in a word that has more than one syllable. So we're going to do the written activity that you have at the end of the chapter. At the end of the chapter, you don't have this chapter, but don't worry. But do this activity, take it from here. Using the analysis of the word cramped given below as a model, analyze the structure of the following syllable words. You have 4 syllable words here, and try to search their phonetic transcription. So, for example, in a word as cramped, you have cramped. You always identify first the center, which is the peak of the vowel, okay? You always identify the vowel, okay? Cramped, yes? So from that, you start deciding. Ra, it's the postinitial. Why? Because we have said before that ra is a postinitial in the case of a consonant cluster. Ka is the initial. K is the initial. And then you have a pre-final in the m, a p is the final, and t the post-final. Okay? The pre-final is the immediate. When you have the consonant cluster, you have always the first part of the cluster, the pre-final. Okay? So you do the same with these ones, and then we correct next class, because we are going to have a video called next class. So you're going to read from your booklet pages 25 and 26, yes, the one that is called weak and strong syllables. Okay, we're going to go there deeper, and you're going to read from, you're going to get it from the Facebook group you have there in files in Unit 3. That chapter from Peter Roach called Weak and Strong Syllables. Okay, so you have to read it for next class. And don't do the activities at the end. Don't do the activities at the end. Just because we're going to do them in Google Meet next class. Okay, we're going to connect to solve the activities. Let me see if I can share here. But here you have the booklet, yes, weak and strong syllables. You read the theory here that you have explained, the explanation, and then you read chapter 9. And after reading chapter 9, weak and strong syllable, please identify the 4 possible centers of a weak syllable. Why? Because to understand what are the characteristics of a strong syllable, we have to know what are the characteristics of the ill sister, the weak syllables, or the ill brother, okay? So you do this, and also you read chapter 15, chapter 9. And for chapter 9, I want you to focus first in the characteristics of strong syllables and the characteristics of weak syllables. Pay attention to those things. Try to use it as a guide. This is what I am saying. Try to focus on what a syllabic consonant is. Yes? So, again, please focus on what are the characteristics of strong syllables, what are the characteristics of weak syllables, you can name them here, and pay attention to syllabic consonants, and what else? Because the class is going to be delivered next class. I mean, this, I will explain this chapter next class, but you need to read it before. Because if you don't read it before, there is a problem. There we have a problem, okay? You don't understand, and then you cannot make questions. And that's all. No need to do the activities that you have below, okay? So just focus on strong syllables, weak syllables, syllabic consonants. What are they? And I think that's all. I think that you don't need to focus on anything else. Please read and do the activities I asked you to do, okay? Well, I hope you're fine. See you soon.